Hey, what's up everybody? It's David with Tough Guys TV, and on this episode we are building a new wood deck for our RV. Now what makes this deck special is that we built it in 3 sections that can be assembled or disassembled and moved wherever we happen to have our RV parked. Now we were lucky enough to partner with Bosch on this video, so all the tools you see in the video will be down in the description with links so you can check them out for yourself. And if you happen to have any questions at all, please reach out in the comments below or on social media at Tough Guys TV. And alright, let's get started. Alright, kicking off this build, I wanted to show off around the outside of the RV. This is our front yard area, you could call it, and this old deck that we're using is actually the platform from the kids' playhouse build. If you've been on the channel for a long time, you might remember that one. As you could tell, it's seen better days, so we wanted to build something nice and new for a better place to hang out outside in front of the RV. And as I mentioned in the intro, we were lucky enough to work with Bosch on this video, and the first thing you're going to see here is their 18-volt cordless miter saw. It's battery operated, and it is paired here with the TB4 Gravity Rise miter stand. Now this was my first experience with a cordless miter saw and a mobile stand for a miter saw, so I hope you'll stay tuned for the entire video and check out all the features that this thing has to offer. I've been very impressed so far with it. Now first up, I needed to clear out this old deck, so we lifted it up and moved it out of the way so we could kind of take stock of the area that was underneath it. That thing had been in place for about a year, so it wasn't the greatest environment underneath. We were lucky to find some critters and had a good time exploring the area with the chickens as well. Next, we wanted to lay out the 2x4s that are going to form the frames. On the short side of these, they're going to be 5 feet long, and on the long sides, they're going to be 8, so 5 foot here and 8 foot on this side. And then we're going to have 1 foot spacing on all the joists throughout the center so that we are set up for diagonal planks. Now each of these are independent of each other, meaning each of the individual platforms can be moved or set up however you'd like. We're setting up now to get these 2x4s cut down, and one quick note, the 2x4s are ground contact treated, so these are specifically treated to be sitting directly on the ground. So if you're building this, you definitely want to have ground contact unless you're going to elevate them. So we wanted to cut down these to 5 feet. These are going to be the short side. The long side, we're not even going to have to cut them down. We're just going to leave those other 2x4s at 8 feet and attach them on the ends with screws. Now on the stand, there's actually a built-in stop block on these extendable arms, which I found that was pretty helpful here because once I set up for the first cut, then I can make all the other cuts that I needed to very quick and easy. All in all, we needed to make 8 cuts like this, and here's how you reset the stop block after you're finished up. Now remember, the short side is the 5-footer and the 8-footer goes on the outside. Now each of these are going to be built as individual platforms. We have 3 laid out here. We are adding a 4th to the end. Now next up, I'm going to mark these on 1 foot increments so that I know where to set all the joists. And there's my daughter introducing everybody to Indy. At 1 foot increments, these are going to be set up close enough together so that we can do diagonal lay for the top planks. Now I'm going to lay out the 2x4s that are going to go on the inside of each of the platforms so that I know where I need to attach them to each end. Now to attach everything together on the base, we're going to be using our Bosch impact driver. This of course is another cordless model. It's got 3 speeds, it's 18 volt, and so far so good. We're using 3-inch screws for the bottom of the frame. We're going to be using 2.5-inch screws for the top planks, but we'll cover that later. I'm going to use 2 screws here to attach each of the joists to that 5-foot outside piece that we cut earlier. Or to say it easier, I'm going to trap all of the 8-foot boards in between 2 of the 5-foot boards on either end. I do want to put 2 screws in each of these, so make sure you buy enough 3-inch screws in order to do this. Now, even though these frames are rated for ground contact, in my case, because I'm dealing with an unlevel area, I do need to lift them up a little bit to level them. And to do that, I'm going to use these 12-inch by 12-inch concrete pavers. Now, these things I think $1.50 each, and they're pretty easy to move around. They're not very heavy. And I'm basically going to position these on critical points so that I have good support underneath. And then I'm going to place them in such a way that I can make sure the decks are somewhat level for my situation. Another positive benefit to elevating these up a little bit is that you get some good airflow underneath the decks. I'm sure that has some benefit to just allowing the wood to last even longer, even though it is ground rated. Here you can see we have all 3 of the first platforms there, and then we ended up adding this 4th platform onto the end to give us a little bit more area on the deck and just overall space to entertain outside. With the frames complete, we're going to head over to the top planks. Now the goal for these is to lay them on a diagonal, meaning I want to cut one end at a 45-degree angle, and then the other end you can either cut off the excess with a circular saw, or you can mark it like we're going to do here for option 1, and you can go ahead and cut it off and fit it in as you'd like. Now I in particular like to see a 1/2 inch overhang here, but this is variable and you could just make the overhang whatever you're comfortable with. So again, this is the first of 2 options we're going to show. In this option, you would cut every board to fit the deck frame as you go. Now, in my opinion, there is some benefit to doing it this way, but it certainly would take you a lot longer and would require a lot more measuring. So what I'm doing here is I cut one board on a 45 at the very end, then I slid it down to match my measurement, and then I cut it the same exact direction, and here you go. You have one board that's fit in place up in the corner, and then it terminates on the other end in a nice 45. Now we've saved the 4th frame for me to show you option 2, which is my preferred method for doing a diagonal top plank deck. So here's what we're going to do. We want all of the panels to go diagonally just like on the other sections, but we're going to start by making a cut on a 45 at the very end of one of these boards. Now a couple of quick safety notes or safety perks about this miter saw is it has a great hold down clamp that will hold the weight of a full 8-foot plank, and it also tells you where not to put your hand if you're wondering. But yeah, you can have a full 8-foot plank on this with the clamp holding it in place combined with the stand. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut that first 45-degree cut on the very end of the first board. Then you're going to take that board over to your frame, and you can use your 2.5 inch screws now. Just tack this thing in place for now. You don't need to put screws in every joist, but you will need to come back and do that later, so don't forget. Now another quick note here is that these planks in particular are still super wet from the treatment processing, so I'm just going to be butting them right up against each other. If you have lumber that has already dried quite a bit, you're going to want to add gaps to your liking before you start screwing them down. Okay, as we start laying the planks down there, I wanted to jump in and talk about what it is that we're doing so you can get a really good understanding of how to make these things just one after another. As we showed, we have the miter at a 45, and we're just repeating that cut, and we're just leaving the boards overhanging on this side so that we can come back and clean them up later. Now, when I started getting down here to the end, I could either flip the miter saw the other way or just flip the board over. Either way, I'm gonna get the same effect. So that what I end up with is 2 sides with nice clean cuts already, and then we'll have 2 sides where we need to cut off the remainder edge, and we're gonna do that with a circular saw. Now, as I mentioned heading into option 2, this is my preferred method because I just think you can go a lot faster, especially if you're doing this by yourself. Not that option 1 is a bad way to go if you're trying to be super precise, it's just that this option gives you the speed advantage. Now here you can see I have a board fully extended again there, cutting the very end of it, and the stand stays nice and level, stays nice and sturdy, and the clamp, again, easy and a huge perk I think with this saw. As you get closer and closer to the corner, you're going to notice that the boards that you're cutting are hanging off really far in one side of the deck frame. So in order to combat this and make your life a little bit easier, as well as put some more material in your pocket, you'll see here in a second, go ahead and mark the boards with your speed square with that 1 inch or 1/2 inch overhang that you prefer, and go ahead and cut one of them so that it can fit in place. Now the other perk of making this cut now is that my offcut piece will now fit in this space that's left, and you can start reusing boards as you cut them. Another recommendation I would make would be to screw the boards down only as you need to, meaning make a bunch of cuts in a row and then come back and screw them all in. As you can see here on this outside corner, I've made all my cuts, but all these individual boards here heading into the corner are still loose so that I can come back and cut them as I need to. And here's a good angle of all the offcuts that we need to make on the short side and the long side. On the short side, I already marked everything with the speed square and a pencil, but on the long side, I'm going to go ahead and use my chalk line just because on that long of a span, it's a way more appropriate tool in order to do this, and you can do it quick and easy. Now, of course, before I'm going to come back with a circular saw and attempt to cut any of the excess board length off, I need to make sure that I have everything screwed down and secured, at least so much that I can make the cuts on the end. Now, with the chalk line, I'm going to use blue chalk here. It's a lot easier to get off if you're going to be applying a stain. Red chalk stains everything forever, so that's just my opinion. I'm going to use blue chalk on this forever and ever. Now, to get these ends cut off, as I've mentioned, we're going to be using a circular saw. This one here is by Bosch. We are running a 7.25 inch 24 tooth edge blade. The blade is also by Bosch in this case, and of course the saw is 18 volt. Now, it has a short side and a long side on the deck of the saw itself, so we want to make sure that the bulk of the saw is sitting on the deck and we have that short side for all of our offcuts. As you can see here, if I do it this way, then the offcuts fall and I have nice support on the deck surface as I'm making my cuts. Now, one quick note here on the blade, this 24 tooth blade would not be what you'd want to choose if you were using, say, a composite decking material instead of a pine treated material or even cedar. You would want to pair your blade with the type of material that you're using on your particular deck. And with that last cut, it was time to finally get things cleaned up. Now, breaking down the miter saw is super simple with this miter saw stand. Just a couple of levers to make sure you've got everything locked in place. Then you pull a release handle and you use your foot to unlock the base, and it's got big, nice rubber wheels, so you can roll this thing back into your shop or out to the truck from the job site. And all right, so what are my final thoughts on this deck build? Well, the number one thing is I love that it is a modular deck system so that I can move these and adjust them whenever I need. We use some simple framing brackets just to hold them together temporarily here on the land. But again, if I need to move the RV at any point in time, I can just pick these up, stack them up onto a trailer, take them out to where I need to go, and then I have a deck again. Not to mention if I just wanted to use them for a subsurface for anything else in the future. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks as always. I hope you'll stay tuned for the next one.